And we welcome you to the Tuesday, September 6th edition of the Rosenblum podcast on the Iowa Everywhere Network. I am Brent Blum, joined by former Iowa State 12-year NFL quarterback Sage Rosenfels, and the game continues. Sage, where are you today?
Today I'm on Bailey Island,
Never heard of it.
which is an island off of Maine, southeast Maine. I was at a wedding, I should say, in Boston over the weekend. Drove about 2 hours up to Portland, Maine, which is a foodie town. Had dinner there, then drove over to the Driftwood Inn. You could look it up, the Driftwood Inn on Bailey Island in Maine. It's absolutely gorgeous. I've never been to Maine before. I think I've been to about 46 of the 50 states. I haven't been to Alaska. I haven't been to Montana and Idaho, and there might be one more in there, but I'm checking this one off the list. And also, when you drive here from Boston, you quickly go through New Hampshire for about 20 minutes, I think.
Are you counting it?
Minutes.
Are you counting that
as
a
definitely
state?
Counts. I think that counts more than just stopping at the airport, right? Like if you've
Fair
never
enough.
been, if you've only been to the Vegas airport but never been to Las Vegas, you haven't been to Las Vegas, right? So anyway, I'm up here in Maine, and I think that's going to be a sort of a reoccurring aspect of the Rosenblum podcast. Is sometimes I'm home in Omaha, Nebraska. Sometimes I'm over in Des Moines or Ames checking out practice, and sometimes who knows where I'll be. So I'm actually tomorrow morning going back to Boston today, flying to Los Angeles to go out and see my son. Going to check out Joshua Tree. Going to take in that Raiders Chargers Week 1 game, which
There you go.
Pretty sweet. Never been to SoFi yet,
Okay.
so that'd be a new experience. Might even do a quick Santa Barbara run to help my girlfriend's daughter move into to her apartment at Santa Barbara Community College. And I tell you what, not all community colleges are built the same. If you're going to go to one, try to go to Santa Barbara Community College because it is absolutely gorgeous. It's right in the water, and I think a lot of those students get into University of California, Santa Barbara, which is really, really hard to get into. It's sort of like an Iowa State engineering technical school of the California schools. And of course, with, I don't know how many people are in California, 40, 50 million people or something like that. So
I'd say a lot.
A lot. Very competitive to get into those California state schools. And so anyway, I've got quite the week ahead of me. Next Tuesday, I will be I'll be back in Omaha next Tuesday. Actually, I fly back Monday. So we're in the world of Sage Rosenfels this week, Bailey Island in Maine at the Driftwood Inn. And it's been a lovely stay. But I am looking forward to it. It has been dreary and sort of drizzly here, which is sort of what you'd think of Maine. In my mind, like rain jackets, fishing boats, people on fishing boats wearing rain jackets. That's what I've seen out there. And but it's just enough where you can go for a jog and just get a little damp. It's not like it's a full-on rain, just a little sprinkle for the last 2 days. But it's been beautiful, and I'm sure I'll come back to Maine at some point.
It's America's guest, Sage Rosenfels. So, Sage, it begs the question, are you going to watch the Cy-Hawk game this week? Because all of our Cy-Hawk coverage on Iowa Everywhere brought to you this week by Prairie Meadows. It's your favorite place to play. Great casino right there in Altoona, just down the road from me here in Bondurant. But Sage, Cy-Hawk week, clearly a big week. We're both Iowa State guys. We're going to have Hawkeye on to balance out the Rosenblum podcast. Your good buddy, Chad Greenway, who played with you at the Minnesota Vikings, coming up. But are you going to try and watch the game when you're in LA, or is this kind of maybe catch it on the DVR? Okay.
This not all games do I get to watch live, Iowa State games, but the Cy-Hawk game is one that I really don't want to miss. There's nothing like capturing it live, whether they win or lose. You can't watch it the next day because everyone's going to tell you what happened. You're going to see what happened on my feeds. And so, yeah, this one I'm going to watch live. I was hoping to maybe try to catch a USC game. They play at Stanford on Saturday. So that really opens it up for me to watch this game. So I'm really excited to see it. It's been 6 in a row for the Hawkeyes. I think it's been 6 in a row for the 5. What's right? We have a missed year.
No, it is 6. No, wait a second. It's Matt Campbell's 0-5, but yes, but 6 total.
They've had
correct.
six total. And I was going back through all those scores this morning from the last 20 years, really since I played. And what really sticks out to me, of course, on the fact that I was one of the last 6, but before that, very even over the course of the last 25 years or so. is Iowa's defense. There's a couple games in the last 10 years where Iowa State has scored, 41 points, lost in overtime.
Yep.
But for the most part, there's some games in there. You're looking at the scores, and it's 17 points, it's 10 points. I think even 3 points in a game. There's some low scoring Iowa State football in those Hawkeye matchups. Ferentz and their coordinators over there over the years have always done a really, really good job of just really good D-line play, solid, very fundamentally sound linebacker and secondary play. And it's just really hard to get the home run ball and score a lot of points and move the ball consistently against them. They have sort of a bend, don't break mentality. It's just really hard to put the ball in the end zone and score points. And so I imagine, even though Hunter Deckers was absolutely fantastic in his week 1 win for the Cyclones, I imagine it might be another low scoring game. It might be another, 2017 type of football game. It just seems like these Iowa State games have been very close and generally low scoring. Of course, we all know Iowa State's defense has been really, really good since Matt Campbell showed up.
The Iowa fans listening to this said 17, sign me up.
Yeah,
after the offensive performance for them, but so we'll get to that. So I want your read. I'm going to ask Chad.
We will get to
yeah.
I didn't watch the Iowa game, but I watched the highlights this morning. So I see the score 7-3. I also, Chris Hassel, who's on the Iowa Network, Iowa Everywhere Network, one of our guys, of course, probably the biggest Hawkeye fan of anyone in the sports media. Would you say, like, as far as national sports media?
That's 100% accurate.
Whether ESPN, he's at CBS. Probably the number one, just unabashed Hawkeye fan out there.
And Sage, so it's even more perfect for Chris is he went to St. Ambrose, so it's the typical Iowa fan. Anyway.
Yes.
But he is a big Iowa fan. We love Chris Hassel.
Huge Iowa fan. And he's so passionate about it. I sincerely appreciate it. And I like giving him a little bit of a hard time occasionally on Twitter when I get the chance to. But I see that score 7-3. I'm like, oh, man, they scored one touchdown. And that was it for the day for the Hawks. And then I go watch the highlights this morning. It was a field goal and 2 safeties. It wasn't even a touchdown. I mean, the Iowa defense outscored South Dakota State in that game 4-3. I mean, really just an ugly. I was at the Red Sox game the other day, and I think they scored more runs, I should say, than the Hawkeyes. And so obviously there's a lot of concern there. The quarterback really did not play well. Threw 1 pick, but his percentage was bad. They obviously couldn't move the ball. I think the punter was probably that, and the defensive whole squad were the MVPs in that football game. And and then they're going to face John Hancock and his defense, usually a top 20 defense in college football, and they've always done an excellent job and usually done a pretty good job against the Hawkeyes. It's just really the offense that hasn't really sort of carried their weight in this great matchup.
Well, good stuff, Sage. So Cyhawk Weekend brought to you by Prairie Meadows this week. Tell me about your Cyhawk experience. I remember one play in particular in 2000. I think it was the first series, the reverse to J.J. Moses. One of my favorite plays of all time. But you played in more games than just that one in 2000.
Yeah, not first series, first play of the game.
First play.
And what's interesting is I believe we were like picking on Aaron Campman, who was originally a linebacker in Iowa. They moved him to defensive ends. We gained a whole bunch of weight. We thought he was a little slow. It's, when you gain 30, 40 pounds in like a year and a half, you're just not going to have that fast twitch anymore. Like, it's just going to take you a second for your body to sort of figure out how to move all that girth. And so we run a reverse on him, and they Ryan Hansen was a safety, took a bad angle, and ends up going to the house. That was the very first play of that football game. Fake 18. Z reverse left to J.J. Moses for the touchdown. But
Still remember it.
My Steve Loney was our OC. Hey, what do you think? We should go with the reverse. I was like, yeah, let's go with the reverse. Get the ball in J.J.'s hands. He was so electric, and he was electric on that play. So my 5 years at Iowa State, first year, freshman year at Iowa, we get beat pretty good. I'm going to say it was like 38-7. McCarney was really just restarting this program from scratch. Second year in Ames, I'm a redshirt freshman, and I think that game was worse. That might have been 56-7 or 63-7.
I think it was 63-21 or something like that.
I mean,
Tim Dwight had like 8,000 yards.
Yeah, Tavian Banks.
Banks.
One of the first plays of the game went about 75 to the house, and Matt Sherman had a big day, and so at that time the programs were very far apart.
Very different.
I mean, it was the end of the the Hayden Fry era. So you still sort of had all that magic just from Hayden still hovering over the program, but it was starting to there's starting to be some cracks in that armor in the following years. In '98, we go into Iowa City. Todd Bandauer's the quarterback, and we get a win. And it was just that was really an incredible experience because nobody after the previous year, we had won I think one game the year before.
Yes.
We were a pretty bad team, and we would go in there into Iowa City and get a win. What a day that was. And that really led to the firing of Hayden Fry at the end of that season. The next year, the Hawkeyes come to Ames. We get a win. It was, I think it was 20-9, I'm going to say. Basically, it was me handing the ball off to Darren Davis. I think I was okay in the day. Matt Bowen, who was a safety for the Hawkeyes, longtime NFL matchup guy for ESPN, and he lives in Chicago, coaches some high school football in Chicago. He hit me so hard in that game. That was probably one of the hardest hits I ever took in college. He was one of those. I mean, if you're a safety that shaves his head, I just feel like
it's coming. It's coming.
You hit people harder.
Yeah.
Aerodynamic. It's something. Yeah. He's got nothing to lose, literally. And then my senior year, we go into Iowa City, and that was really special for me because that was a start. And I grew up in Eastern Iowa, of course, over in Maquoketa. My first ever college football game, 7th or 8th grade, high school friend brought me to. I sat in that northeast end zone for that football game, right where the Iowa came out of their tunnel. And so from going to watch a couple games there, sort of middle school, high school, to then at the end of that game scoring sort of the game touchdown. We're up 3. They had all the momentum. We're backed up on about the 15-yard line, and I hit a third and 8 pass that they had the perfect coverage for the play called, and receiver Craig Campbell and I just sort of made a play and threw it low, and he caught like a second base catch, and we sort of after that we just moved the ball methodically down the field, and about 7 plays later I ran in and dove into that same northeast end zone for that game securing touchdown. So that was a really special moment for me. And what I've always said to people is there was more relief there almost than like excitement. Yes, I was thrilled we won, but you put so much of your heart and soul into playing football. That whole off season. It's not like, Major League Baseball. You have 162 games. Every one of those games is really, really important when you play college football and when you play your rival team and play the rival team that you grew up an hour and a half from. Those have extra meaning to you, and you're going to have that for the rest of your life. And so that was one of the best, or one of my favorite wins probably of my entire life was that 2000 season, and that's sort of helped build part of our 9-win season, and definitely one of the big early season wins of that year.
Well, it's Cy-Hawk week. We got a couple Iowa Staters on the podcast, Sage and I, so we thought we'd balance the scales. Believe it or not, we actually do get along with Iowa.
Hold on,
folks, immediately. Start over.
No, keep it rolling. I lost.
Wait a second. There you get. It's Chad Greenway in his Iowa Hawkeye helmet.
The blank out was perfectly timed. How about this?
Chad, how are you, my man?
I'm doing really good. Yes, thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it. And I lots to talk about after that last weekend in Iowa City. Maybe lots to not talk about and move on. But yeah, it was either way. Thanks for having me. It'll be fun to talk through this Cy-Hawk series.
So the first question we ask all of our guests is how do you know Sage Rosenfels? I think this one's pretty easy, but how do you know Sage Rosenfels?
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to be a teammate with Sage up here in Minnesota. So had how many years together, Sage? I never remember this stuff. 2?
Well, see, you were there for like 15 years, and nobody in the NFL plays in one team unless you play in one team and you got cut in year 2.
It'd be good enough, Sage.
Yeah, so Chad played one team. I played for 5, and you can really say I played for 7 because I played for 2 teams twice, right? So I have 7 turns, but. Was it 11 years with the Minnesota Vikings for you? But for me, I got traded there in 2009. I was, Tavares was the only one there. I was hoping to start. I come in and we are in the middle of training camp, and I'm actually at lunch. And Childress was not at practice or not the walkthrough that morning. And I'm at lunch. It's like Jared Allen, Ben Lieber, Greenway. We're sitting there, and the TV's on. and there's Childress driving Favre from the St. Paul airport.
Oh no,
or wherever they landed, and they're coming up in the Escalade here, and I think I looked at Chad, and Chad looks at me and goes, "Well, this is awkward," you know.
Yeah, it was a moment in time where you'll never forget. Like Childress was out there and made some interesting decisions, but this one was the most dramatic entrance and most dramatic decision, and obviously just waves across the league. When you're sitting by the guy that unfortunately is going to be replaced, it's not the best scenario. And to Sage's credit, handled it like an absolute pro. But the hard part, Sage, I think, was you were really in a position to lead a really good football team and had first really chance to go to start and be the starter of an excellent team that would have made some waves with or without Brett. So credit to Sage for handling it how we did, though.
So I want to ask about this because I was looking that up last night with the OJ style chase behind Favre and the helicopter on ESPN. Sage, did you know right away? Were you like, or did you think, hey, I can still compete for this job?
Oh no, that was the end of it.
Okay.
And not only that is I had even though I thought I had sort of beaten out Tavares, by the way, who he and I got along great. I think there was something about we both had to probably deal with Childress, and so we both would, look at each other like we're on the same page, but maybe we're both not on the same page necessarily as the head coach always. But I sort of thought I had sort of beaten him out that training camp, but when Favre showed up, not only did which I knew I wouldn't be, of course, competing with Brett. He came back to be the man, and he came there for the same reason I came there. I left Houston. I forced the trade to get out of Houston. They didn't want to trade me. But I really wanted that opportunity to start. It was like my one chance to, I've always been a backup, and it's like, here's a chance, or at least compete for the starting job. Before I was a 3, competing for the 2, or just happy to be the 3 for a couple of years, and just be in the NFL. And this was like, I had worked my way up 8 years or whatever it had been. And I was really hoping to have a chance to start. But when Brett showed up, now I know I wasn't going to be starting that year. But I was fairly sure, because Childress had drafted Tavares, that I wouldn't be the number 2 guy either. So I was the 3rd quarterback, which I hadn't been for about 4 or 5 years. I had been the number 2 guy for like the previous 4. So I really went up there, made the most money in 1 year than I ever made in my career, but yet was the 3rd string quarterback for that great season, which was great because it was like the most stress-free season that I'd ever gone through. I mean, Brett never gets hurt. And if he did get hurt, Tavares was going in. And the team was so good. The offense had superstars everywhere. I mean, Hutchinson's in the Hall of Fame. Adrian will be in the Hall of Fame. Percy Harvin was a rookie, and he was just like, look at this. He was like a running back in a receiver's body, and he was fast and strong. And Sidney Rice was a young, promising, tall wide receiver, but defense was just loaded. Again, that's one of the reasons I went up there. Guys like Chad Greenway and Kevin Williams and Jared Allen, E.J. Henderson, middle linebacker. Ben Lieber, the 3rd linebacker, was a really good player as well. I mean, it was number 1 in defense as far as stopping the run every year. And so teams just had to throw on 3rd and long all the time. And Jared would just go back there and sack the quarterback about 15 times. It was a lot of fun. That of all the teams I was on, I grew up watching like the '85 Bears, and it was like a circus. That was like the most sort of circusy, like we're going on the road in the circus, right? We know we're going to be covered because Brett's there. You never know what Brett's going to do. You never know what type of play he's going to pull out of his rear at some point in the game. You know what I mean? It was just an adventure more than anything, right? I mean, you just didn't know it in any game, or what weird thing might happen on the sidelines with the head coach or this or that. The players got along great. The players I thought were very, very close, both offensively and defensively. And my time with the Minnesota Vikings, I was there for 3 training camps, and I was really only there for about a season and a half total. But I really did love my time as being a Minnesota Viking and being a teammate of Chad over there. And he stayed there. I mean, Chad Greenway, I tell you what, for a guy who played in the NFL for a long time, from South Dakota, but South Dakota to Iowa to Minnesota, and that's it. You just don't see that. Like, you just don't see guys go to the University of Miami, stay in the state of Florida,
right? Really cool.
Never leave the state of Florida, basically. So he never left the upper Midwest for the most part, which has probably been pretty nice because you are a small town. Let's talk about that. You are a small town guy, right? Eight or nine man football. And I know you were number 18 at Iowa because you just adored me at Iowa State wearing my 18, and that's what you wanted to be. Is that right?
Yeah, so just to speak on the Vikings years, those years were incredible. The 09 season was circus. We were a show everywhere we went, and it was fun to be a part of those personalities and kind of see. But to your point, Sage, like our locker room was tight. Our locker room was cohesive. We had a lot of fun in the locker room. We had a lot of fun on trips. I mean, it was a blast. Sort of a blast. The only thing that could have topped it was that team should have won the Super Bowl champion that year. Just the way to screw that up. Because that's the type of team I think you look back on. I was never part of a Super Bowl champion team, but that's how they look and act and feel. I feel like, and it's just we just couldn't get it done. But yeah, so I in South Dakota, 4 people in hometown. I graduated 26 kids in my class. Played 9-man football. I mean, I didn't get recruited by anybody. I got one offer from Iowa. Otherwise, I was going to go play D2 ball at SDSU, which is now, you look at the game that weekend. I mean, they're legit double-A powerhouse. Can play against anybody, but back then. It was a big jump to go from a D2 NCC team to Iowa, and even at that point, Iowa was not very strong. But a kid backed out of a scholarship offer and went somewhere else. And a player, John LaFleur, who's actually a farmer in South Dakota, raised his fellow out there, saw me play my state championship game my junior year, and kind of put me on Iowa, or put Iowa on me rather. And then they followed up, and he kept pressing them, and I played a ridiculous senior championship again, and that's when they got really heavy, and they didn't offer me till November of my senior year. And then that was the one chance I got. So what do you say? I mean, I was scared. I was just fearful of I was the only Division I recruit out of South Dakota that year. I was just full of failing and going and falling on my face and didn't really know what to expect, and had a massive chip on my shoulder and went to college and just went there every day and just got better and stronger. And genetically, I had the body that got faster as I got bigger, which is a little unique and weird. But it was just perfect. The perfect program for me, perfect head coach, perfect strength coach, honestly, and Chris Doyle. I mean, a lot of great people in my life and a lot of luck involved. But it was almost lucky that I went to a nowhere school and got recruited at one school because one came on me.
It's a crazy story that you can just think about an 11-year NFL pro with one offer from Iowa, and here you made it. So let's before we get into your story,
can I say something real quick?
Yes.
You've got 2 11-year pros, because I had one offer too, Iowa State, and my offer was on like December 21st or something. We had like a winter basketball tournament in Dubuque, Iowa. And Josh Rank, who was a teammate, he was playing for Cedar Rapids private school. And he and I, our parents, we followed each other in minivans out to Ames for a recruiting trip. And we both got our offer. And, I think Chad and I both made the best of it. Chad, what were your heights and weights when you graduated high school?
I was just under 6'3". So I call myself 6'3", and I was probably 195, I would say 200. Would probably be, and I was a quarterback. I was a quarterback and a free safety. So Nebraska asked me to walk on as an option quarterback. That's what I did in high school. And I, when I get an offer to, come on, internet. And when I get an offer to a full ride offer, I mean, obviously couldn't afford to pay for school. We had no money. My parents were, farms, and we, able to afford to go and pay the walk tuition. I was like, well, I'm going to go to Iowa. That's obvious. Frank Solwitz, his Southern draw is like, son, we'll offer you a chance to walk on the University of Nebraska. And I'm like, but there's all money right there. I think I'll just get a scholarship. It worked out for me because I wouldn't have been a very good option quarterback, I don't think.
Well, I saw your stats in high school. You ran for like 4,000 yards, so I don't sell yourself too short. So speaking of quarterbacks, before we get into the rest of your story, you were in Iowa City on Saturday. Your impressions of the game against South Dakota State, kind of the story for Iowa the last couple of years, defense elite, offense struggled. How would you categorize what happened on Saturday?
Well, let's start here. Who in the right mind schedules South Dakota State? Who in the right mind schedules North Dakota State? Like, show me the win there. I don't see a win. To me, if I'm, and again, love Gary Barta and everything about Iowa. I'm a homer through and through. But like, I'd go play Alabama. I go play either an SEC team or an ACC team or a Pac-12 team and get a home and home with them. it just seems like it's a bigger win or a loss that's like, hey, you learned something from it. SDSU is a program that you beat them 30, they expect you to do it. And if you by by 4, everybody's like, what is wrong with you? And if you lose to them, which is a possibility, you look like an idiot. So I mean, it's just a tough scheduling situation, especially with as good as their program is. A lot of Coach Stiglmeyer, he recruited me to SDSU. He's an unbelievable football coach, and they are recruiting in a lot of ways the same kids that Iowa State and Iowa recruiting. I mean, and Northern Iowa recruiting. These are all the kind of the same kids. It's just Iowa State get maybe that next level or that perceived next level kid. So it's just a tough matchup, first of all, and that's not an excuse. That's a legit football team. But as far as Iowa goes, I mean, offensively, there's not much to say. I mean, I hate to be critical of a college kid, and I'm not that guy to say do it that way. I think it's a 2-part issue. I think the quarterback wasn't making the throws that he was scheduled to make, and I think offensively, you got to put him in good positions to make the plays that he can make. And I think that was it's a tough situation. The hard part for me is being critical of college kids. I have an issue with it, but I know it's part of the deal. The reality is you're the quarterback at Iowa with a pretty good football team. There's a certain minimum you have to hit these easy routes to the flat, these easy third down forward, you overthrow a guy by a couple of yards. Those are the balls you just have to throw and you have to make to be certifiably a Division I, quarterback, especially at Iowa, when you're going to throw the ball 15 to 20 times and you need to be efficient with it. And then I think you want to say is we couldn't run football either. So the other issue is we weren't really we couldn't just roll up the offensive line and say, okay, throwing game's not there. We're just going to smack you in the mouth for 4 quarters and run 200 yards and make it happen either. So I guess we'll talk about the positives. The punting game is absolutely elite. Which people and we laugh about it. I was laughing about it in the stadium, but I've seen a lot of really great punters in my day. The different kicks he was making, like different spins, trajectory, high trajectory, the spin. I mean, he has them all. I mean, it really is impressive. As much as people laugh about Iowa and special teams, like I know Iowa State, same thing. Like you focus on special teams and like a focus of these good football teams. Like he's elite, which is crazy to say. And then defensively, we do what we do. I mean, we were able to stop the run, slow them down. We created some havoc. We rushed the quarterback. I mean, covered well. Offensively, South Dakota was really nothing going on there. So we won how we're supposed to win or how we've been winning. I just think back to my years when I was in Iowa City, and we had really good defenses, and we'd score 45 points. We'd points with Bank and Drew Tate and Nathan Chandler, and we had good talent. Was the talent so much better back then? I don't know. I guess it's hard for me to say, but we found ways to score points, and I guess that's the biggest take from the weekend. We're not going to be able to. We can't score.
It is interesting that as the casual fan, right? For me, I'm a casual Iowa watcher, watch them here and there, and what hits my mind when I think of Hawkeye football, for me, right off the bat, O-linemen and tight ends. O-line, yep. You guys put out O-linemen and tight ends in the NFL. I mean, if you guys have a 7th guy go 7th round as a right guard, a little under talented, doesn't have all the size, he plays in the NFL for 7 years. You guys find ways to put O-linemen and tight ends in the NFL. D-linemen as well. And I think O-linemen, tight ends, and really good defense all around. Good talent, but just so fundamentally sound. I went to the Iowa State game a couple years ago, and it seemed like Iowa pretty much played cover 4, cover 2, occasionally dropped the safety down, and that was it. And we're shifting, we're moving, we're motioning, and Iowa guys are just standing there. They're just standing there, and I think they just know the ins and outs of what they're being taught so well, so they can then they play fast. But I think they feel like they keep it pretty simple over there. They're not trying to reinvent the wheel. Meanwhile, Iowa State on the other end, also a very good defense, and we have a defense that like very few people play, but everyone's trying to copy because it's this 3 down front, 8 in the back end. Everyone's hustling to the ball, but very much also a bend don't break, style of defense, but a lot of more variables when you do that. When you only rush 3, You can occasionally rush a fourth, and who's going to be that fourth? You can rush two, who are going to be those two more. And they're just like more variables in the back end, so it's a little more based off of confusion. And Iowa, they're not trying to confuse you. They're like, this is what we're playing. Try to move the ball on us and try to move the balls consistently for 10 to 15 plays. And they've just done a great job over there in Iowa City with just sound football. And you get those types of guys, though. I think Kirk Ferentz recruits, and the way he coaches is like sound style football. Do your job. This is your gap. Do it to the best of your ability. You don't have to be the most talented player because you're going to have about 4 guys on defense and offense that are NFL style talent. And then the other 7 are just blue collar, do your dang job, fit into your gap and do it well. And you're there for 3-4 years. You develop, you end up being very, very sound. I said O-line play, that was unusual. They really struggled in the first game, as you said, both running the football and protecting their quarterback. But the defense was very good, as it's been for the most part, really, for about the last 18 years.
I think I like 3 numbers in Iowa, like in 4 years. I think that's like literally like we didn't mix coverage, like we didn't play nickel. And that was one of the reasons why I was such a draftable player, because we never brought in an extra DB. Like it was an end of game situation or something, some keep coverage just to protect. But I would walk out on the slot receiver every time, and I would just handle it, get my hands on them, widen the route, push them to a corner, find my spot in coverage. And to your point, like we just fast and simple. We knew every combination was going to come at us, and we knew how to play every one of them. Now, of course, you make mistakes and guys make plays, but it allowed you to play fast and allowed you to play simple. And a lot of times, the simpler you are, the less mistakes you make, right? That's the biggest thing, is the more things you do, the more chance for a guy to have a mental, the more chance for a guy to slip or come off the edge and can't get home. Or when you just play simple and do what you do, like it's a good brand of football if you have the players that can play that style and not go take that risk or not go take that chance. Stay in your gap, make the plays that come to you, and trust the other 10. But I've also played, and then I get drafted into Tampa too, which was that system essentially. And then Mike Zimmer comes in my 9th year, which is a little bit more like, hey, we're gonna mess with you, we're gonna have fun, and we're gonna blitz from different angles and send different guys and drop linebacker, drop in, and we're gonna rush a linebacker off of your protection call. Like, it's just next level thinking. As a player, that's more fun because you get to do a lot more fun things. But as a player, there's also a lot more responsibilities and get right. So it is kind of the yang to the different defenses. There's some great defensive football play this weekend.
So, Chad, Cyhawk Week, tell me your memories of the Iowa State game. I think you played in 3. You were hurt your freshman year, from what I could see. That was the Seneca Wallace 2002 game in Kinnick. But you went 2-1, won the first 2, and then lost in Ames. I think it was your junior or senior year, 23-3. But what do you remember about that game and what it meant as a Hawkeye? Because you were part of that team that ended that 5-game Iowa State winning streak.
Yeah, so I always remember the rivalry, a very true like college rivalry. Like I didn't get a lot of hate. I didn't get a lot of anything other than a lot of mutual respect. I thought that came from the coach staff at Iowa State and how they respond to players. And when you're reading news articles and you're reading interviews, like I always got a lot of like respectful kind of thoughts. And I never had when you're walking into in Iowa City and you're still walking in hey, state, I'm like, well, I don't know anything about state. I'm from South Dakota. Like, you sort of learn this as you become an Iowan, right? And become a Hawkeye. But it was, going into Jack Trice winning my sophomore year was unbelievable feeling because the crowd is overwhelming. I mean, there's no doubt about it that when you walk in there on Cyhawk Week, it is an absolute problem to go in there, especially when things aren't going your way and there's some turnovers, and which we found out our senior year. And it's like a flood. Right? Once one bad thing happens, and all of a sudden there's 3 bad things that happen. We were able to curb that my sophomore year because of punt blocks. We blocked 2 punts that year. Sean Constantine, I think, might have got both. Shocking. I
think he did.
But made enough plays early on to kind of curb that momentum, and then we just made enough plays down the stretch. And I can remember that being that was my first year starting. I had a couple good games before that, but that was really my game where I had kind of stepped out and this was who I'm going to be. And I had a bunch of tackles, a bunch of plays, and Abdul did as well, my roommate there at middle linebacker, Abdul Hodge, and sort of felt like that was my first real legit game. And then my junior year, you guys came to my place, and it was like, or to Iowa City, it was like 17-10 or 17-15. I can't remember the score.
Yep.
It was a really
Yep.
scoring game and a really defensive battle, which I can picture this weekend being is more of that style. But then as soon as we say that, it'll be 45-42 or something crazy. Who knows? But that's how rivalries work. But then my senior year, I remember just being overwhelmed. Especially, we had a really young defensive front. We graduated Matt Roth, Jonathan Babineau, Tyler Lupke, a lot of really elite players. And we had a young defensive line, and we couldn't handle the front, and we got beat. And we were able to rebound and have pretty solid that year. We weren't a team that were my year for sure.
We had on Kenny Maine last week on the podcast, and we played a video that he did for his old Main Street. We had you on there. It was you, it was Matt Roth, it was Constantine, all these names that were saying that. What was it was that you guys had beat Ben Roethlisberger at Miami of Ohio.
Yep.
He had come to Iowa City. You guys beat him. He threw 4 picks, and yet he hadn't lost yet in the NFL. He had gone the whole regular season and the playoffs, and you guys were like, basically you guys were better than the Patriots and Belichick. That was sort of the
I mean, his takes were so good. I mean, he's so funny. I can remember shooting that. The production on that, it was hilarious and fun, and just like, and then how he did, like, of course, get Matt Roth involved for any Hawkeye fans or some fans that know about Matt Roth and his personality. I mean, it was just like Kenny nailed it. Like, every piece of it was just great.
My Matt Roth, I got a Matt Roth story for you. 2005, I'm with the Dolphins. Nick Saban, Nick Saban's our head coach, and that was the year we drafted him. And Channing Crowder, who is a linebacker from University of Florida, who now does some stuff, looks like, with ESPN stuff. And Channing is a wild card, and he was really a wild card back in the day. And we always have these talent shows, right? You see these videos of these guys singing, or it might be their fight song or whatever it might be. Well, their talent was they brought in a stripper, and they had her strip in front of Nick Saban. That was the Matt Roth, Channing Crowder talent show.
What?
That was the talent show. I think Matt was sort of like, I have to do this because Channing wants to, and they were sort of put together or something as like defensive players drafted high. But that was the Matt Roth talent.
He was, if him and Channing, I don't know Channing Crowder, but I know enough about him to know that's a bad combination.
Yeah. Do not put those people in the same area, like, after they leave the facility. That would be bad. But I saw him about 10 years ago at like an Iowa game. Matt Roth, I tell you, good player though. That totally an Iowa type of player, right?
Yep.
Sort of like not wasn't 6'6" and wasn't a combine freak, but hard-nosed player. Yep. Blue collar, but did have talent and had all those things you're looking for. And I think was a second rounder for us.
He came as like a really recruited middle linebacker, and then just kind of grew out of that. He just became kind of too big, and he was more of a stiffer build and not as flexible to get back into coverage. So he kind of put his foot on the ground. And then he gained weight to kind of move inside and be like a 3-tech. I think is probably what he ended up being. He ended up being like a kind of like a defensive end, and a 3-4 was kind of he could rush the passer a little bit. He did in college, certainly, but in the NFL, he's more of a take on the block and play more of a over technique or tech player.
Yeah, and Saban at that time was a little more of a 3-4 style guy, so we had him as more of an outside linebacker. He definitely wasn't a drop into coverage.
Can't make him think too much. Yeah, make him think.
He's one of those guys you say, wherever the ball is, go get it. Yeah, he's that type of player.
Chad, I wanted to ask you, you've been on elite defensive teams. This Iowa defense is elite for sure. But when you have an offense that has sputtered in really, 7 games in a row dating back to last year, does that put extra emphasis as a defensive player where you're like, okay, we got to keep them below 14 or below 17 or whatever it is? And, how would you think the locker room is in Iowa City right now?
Yeah, I think Phil Parker being the lead of that group. I mean, he's been an absolutely underrated coach he gets a lot of accolades, but this guy has been so good for so long. He produces NFL talent. He produces great defenses almost every year. think the thing about it, it's very important for them to stay focused on what they do and not start looking across the aisle at what the offense is doing, what the special teams are doing. I've met a lot of these kids again this summer. I mean, they have these Campbell kids, Jacobs, which it looks like he may be injured. I mean, these kids are legit. I mean, they are big, they are physical, they are athletic. I mean, they look the type. They're NFL players. What I love about it is their focus. They're real focused on what they do, and I think it's you asked about the locker room. It's real easy to start pointing fingers, and you see this a lot more in like an NFL circle. In college, they do a lot better job, especially in really strong programs with strong leaders. Like I'd say both of our programs are. Is you're going to have is like you focus on what you do. They're going to take care of their stuff, and if that's what's going on, then you know what? The next game they're going to have our back, and that's just how it works. And I think that's what comes with great leadership, and that's whether that's Phil Parker or Kirk Ferentz. You just see that with teams that are well coached. That's what we're focused on. They have enough things to worry about this weekend with Iowa State's offense to stay focused on what they have to do. And you know what? They play well. I think you can always overcome a bad offense, but it's really hard to overcome a defense. And that's we've kind of this last certain 8-9 games, but also just kind of the last 10 years.
When you're talking about Kirk Ferentz and the Parkers, the Parker family, they've been there for such a long time, but all good things come to an end. At some point in time, Kirk Ferentz is not going to be the head coach at the University of Iowa. It could be 15 years from now. Who knows? Would you as a former Hawkeye, would you want a coach that's on the staff to be the next head coach, you think, or someone coming from outside who's been successful at a smaller school? I've known LeVar Woods since I was in high school. LeVar Woods and I played. LeVar Woods was my Shrine Bowl tailback in the Iowa High School Shrine Bowl. His fullback at West Line in Northwest Iowa was Kyle Vandenbosch, who was an unbelievable defensive end for the Huskers and then played in the NFL for 12 years himself. I mean, true psychopath, Kyle Vandenbosch for sure. Wore like the Nike red eyes. He had like the red contacts, so you look over and he just freaks you out. Type of deal. I mean, the definition of high motor. Literally, the motor's about to explode at all times was sort of the Kyle Vandenbosch style of football. But LeVar Woods was a guy that, I don't know. He's been the tight ends coach sometimes. When he comes to Omaha, sometimes he and I go out for a drink. He's in charge of recruiting in the Omaha area. And I do see him as a guy. I think he's special teams now, but I do see him as a guy that could be the next head coach at the University of Iowa. He's still fairly young. He's my age, 44. He's been with that program forever. Who do you see as a guy that could be the next head coach? And do you think LeVar Woods could be that guy?
I saw you tweet about these questions that were coming. I'm like, oh boy, this might. I don't want this to go just go tubular, right, and just go all over the internet. So I got to play it safe. But no, here's thoughts on that. I think what Kirk has done has been incredible over this run. But like you said, at some point, somebody else will be coaching this football team. And Phil Parker has earned that right to be in that conversation. And I think whether he wants to, I don't know. Phil's not really that guy. But then again, maybe that's what he's always wanted. I don't know. I've never had that conversation with Phil. But to not have him in this conversation would be an absolute travesty for what he's been able to accomplish there and his leadership. His press conferences would be delightful for a bad game. I would love to ask him some questions to get him fired up. He uses some really colorful language, which I think we'd all have fun with. I think LeVar Woods is maybe the most obvious choice as far as if you're around that staff and around the personality of the staff. I think he has the most likable personality to be a lead of a program like Iowa. He's also a very good football coach. He's a very good motivator. He's been there and done that. He's coached a lot of different angles, from a special team tight end, kind of solid play defense. So for me to pass on LeVar Woods would be nearly impossible. You spend 5 minutes with LeVar and you're like, well, I'll hire him to do anything. I don't know what it is, but I'll hire him. So I think he has to be in that conversation. You can't have this conversation probably about bringing up Brian, right? I mean, Brian, obviously the OC, the coach's son, was my teammate for 4 years, has been coaching the NFL, has come back and been a leader of that group. So you have to kind of you see the struggle that the defense is going through right now and say, hey, maybe how does he bring us out of this? And maybe that's kind of his badge there too. So, I think those would be the most obvious picks for the next, and to your first question in there is, I would like to see stability continued. I'd like to see an extension of staff, maybe a branch of that coach tree to take it on, because that style and that leadership style has worked, and it's worked for Iowa football. And people always get on me if we're having a conversation with buddies, like, yeah, but you win 8 or 9 games, so you're going to win this or that. Like, you know what? But we have an elite program that does a great job every year. We know what we're going to get. We have a great leader at the helm that we're proud of. Like, that to me says a lot about your program. And we're not going to recruit against Alabama. We're not going to recruit against these Clemson. We're not recruiting against. It's just not possible. You might have a one-off year. You can go take a shot, every once in a while. But listen, the folks and names, you guys know just as well as we do. It's not easy to recruit to Iowa. So to go get body and go Ohio State consistently, to beat Oklahoma consistently, it's just not as easy as people make it sound.
Okay, Chad, your thoughts on the game Saturday? You don't have to give us a prediction. I think we know who you'd probably pick if you had to. But what do you think are the keys? Obviously, probably a low scoring. This may be like the game in 2004 or 2005 when it's 17-10, 17-14.
Yeah, I'd like to see us score a touchdown. So I hope 7. Maybe we should overrun safeties. Like, maybe that we should make. Is that maybe like 3 is like maybe too low? I don't know. Yeah, I think it's going to be. I really hope it's going to be a very competitive game. I think that at home really helps this year because of the struggle on offense a little bit. I think our home crowd behind our defense is going to be needed. If we can rattle that offense at all at Iowa State, is going to be helpful. And also, it's if you can make a play early in the game, with Peaches, if you can make a play and get that crowd to flip from what he was getting last weekend, could maybe trigger something, right? And quarterback play better than anybody, Sage. The guy has an absolute end kid. It's almost a detriment. You have to learn how to be able to control that. And a lot of guys have an issue with, how do I check that down? How do I take something off of it? How do I find that touch? And that's what he seems like he's really struggling with, a lot of overthrows. At home, can he find that groove and make a play to get the crowd behind? Maybe he can build momentum off of that. I think this is a 20-17 type of win for the Hawkeyes.
Well, we'll go the other way. Sage and I will go the other way.
I tell you what, it's interesting. As we just talked about head coaches, right? Head coach possibilities, where it's LeVar Woods or Brian Ferentz or Parker. What's interesting is, as we said, their defense. If it ends up being a 7-3 win by the Hawkeyes, you got to think the defensive side of the ball seems to be more head coach worthy than the offense. The way it's been, been looking a little bit, so far the last few years. So it should be a great game. They every year it just seems like it's a great game, and it's amazing that you go back and you look at the history of this whole thing, where they didn't play for 43 years. By the way, I think it was the Iowa AD refused to return the phone calls of the Iowa State AD because he didn't want to play him anymore, or whatever the deal was back then. Maybe the phones didn't work. It was like 1936 or something. But it's been, and the fact that, I was at 2019 and 2021 College Game Day, did this game. That's pretty incredible for a state of 3 million people to have College Game Day, a national spotlight come in. It really is it's a tribute to both programs. And, the state of Iowa is interesting. It's 3 million people, but we've got 3 legitimate programs. Northern Iowa is a legitimate program at their level. Wisconsin, they've got one program, really, right? Minnesota, really one program. Nebraska, really one program. And the state of Iowa has 3, and they're very competitive to good, to top 25, to, at FCS. Trevor Penning, there looks like might be the best O-lineman of this draft so far coming out of Northern Iowa. So it is amazing. I actually asked the Iowa State recruiting coordinator, I think it was earlier this summer or this spring, how many Division I guys come out of the state of Iowa every year? And he goes, well, when you played, it was about 5 or 6. But now it's about 15 to even 20 when you start talking about these guys that are going to maybe a smaller school, Division One. There are a lot more athletes in this state. And
you look at the matchup that Iowa had this weekend against SDSU. I think there was 2 kids from Solon alone that started for SDSU. And I didn't even look at the rest of the roster, but you have to assume there's a lot more Iowans on there. They're going to SDSU, they're going to NDSU, they're going to UND, they're going to USD, and they're jumping across, they don't fit maybe that mold of being a Cyclone or a Hawkeye and having a lot of success. So I think when you lay it out that way, because I didn't even really think about it that way. We have St. Thomas now here in Minnesota, with just start to be a Division I program. But I mean, to have a Big 12 and a Big 10 team plus Northern Iowa in Iowa with only 3 million people is ridiculous, because Minnesota's got almost double that per population and really in one program. And I wanted to say this before we were done. I had a chance to meet Matt Campbell this offseason or this summer at the Iowa Football Coaches Association meetings, and just was really impressed. I've been impressed with him since he was hired on how he leads the program there and how he's done. So I wanted to take a chance. I know there's a lot of Cyclone fans on here listening to that. I mean, you guys got to feel good about where you're at as far as leadership and how that's gone. I mean, because he is certainly moving things. He has moved things in the right direction. And I think similar to Hawkeyes, it's always nice going to bed at night knowing you have the right leader and knowing that whatever else happens after that is going to happen. But as long as you got that taken care of, and you know that your program's in the right direction, and you know you're getting the right kids, and you're recruiting the right kids, and folks recruiting real kids, right? So that way you're going to go to the stadium on Saturday and cheer for kids that, I grew up right next to him, or I think that's important in Iowa, and I think that's something that both programs have done a better job of. I would say that how they're in Iowa. Like, nobody wants to play for those programs more than kids that grow up right next door. And get them in your program, and you're going to see what they're capable of, because they're going to give you everything you got. And I think that says a lot about the programs.
I think what both schools do, and all three, including Northern Iowa, is development. I think Iowa guys develop, and I think that goes back to what's been ingrained in us with the cold winters and the farming and the small towns, is the work ethic. And when you have work ethic, you develop. You do. If you work hard, you will get slightly better and maximize your talents. And I think both programs have those leaders that get the players to really maximize their talent. Might be 2-star guys or some 3-star guys or a 1-star guy. I mean, I was a no star, 1-star. Same with you, Chad. I don't even know what there were stars back then. Whatever it was, I wasn't paying attention, didn't have internet, all that stuff. So, they saw me at a 7-on-7 camp, and we didn't even know what 7-on-7 was. We're like, dude, we get 7 guys. No, it's only 5 receivers and a quarterback and a center, but you don't really need a center. So really, it's 6-on-7. We had no idea. We didn't know, the first time we'd ever done that stuff before. That's really how I got a scholarship. So I do think development of raw athletes, multi-sport athletes, which I know you were as well. I think that's a big thing that both programs do. I mean, Iowa does a great job of getting all these wrestlers that end up being offensive linemen, scrapping it up out there on the inside. But by the way, I was thinking, if you want to get into coaching, we'd love to have you at Iowa State. I mean, I will find a spot for you. You know what I mean?
I'm expensive. I'm expensive. I don't like to watch film that much, and I'm expensive. So you got to take that into consideration.
Noted.
Yeah. Wait a second. Wait, you're expensive. You know you've made your cash with the Minnesota Vikings. Thank you to the Will family for those multiple contracts. And I've seen your house on Lake Minnetonka. You don't need any more paychecks. Your paycheck might barely pay for the taxes on that thing. But we really want you to come to Ames, not just to be our coach. We want your daughter, Madden, to come and be a point guard for the Cyclones. Talking about being the father of a freshman in high school who started varsity basketball in 7th grade. Is that right?
Yep.
You have a small private school, started in 7th grade for the high school varsity. She's a couple years in now. She's a freshman. She's been offered by Iowa, Iowa State, Michigan, amongst some other schools. I'm seeing it on the socials there. Talk to me about what it's like to be a dad. I don't have Division I athletes. It did not filter down for me, but it has for you. Probably help that you're married to a cross country runner from the University of Iowa.
Sure.
And so now you got this point guard shooter. Man, she's just got her form is just incredible. You got a gym in your house. Of course, they can practice as much as they want.
Yeah, the genesis of this kind of came from two parts. And part is I give football a lot of credit because I was able to retire when Madden was 9. And she was in third grade and she was just starting to play hoops. She had been playing hoops about a year, but I kind of took over coach and full-fledged into it. And I was a hooper growing up. I played high school basketball, could have played a lower level Division II basketball, but so I had some ability. But my biggest thing was I hadn't been around the game for so long. It's like, how do I now teach the game? So I spent a lot of YouTube basketball, ball handling, shooting, and I had a really good coach in high school that taught me the correct way to shoot a basketball and form, and I was able to kind of teach those things to my kids young. And she's like the fourth best shooter in the house. I think my oldest, my second, she's the real shooter. But what's fun is Madden just loves to compete. She competes really hard. She loves to go out and challenge. I mean, she's physical. She's probably 5'8". I mean, she's not super long and tall. She plays fast and can shoot the ball and competes hard. I mean, I think you can find a spot for anybody that can do that. And she's playing high school soccer right now. She played in the ECNL level soccer until this year. We've taken out a club. The schedule's not working now, but she's playing high school soccer. State champ in the 4x4 last year in high school track. She just loves to compete, and she's a talented athlete, certainly. But what I'm most proud of is just, when you're talented young like that, you have a lot of pressure and extra stress, especially social media age, which we've all seen with young athletes. And she's handled it with grace. And what it does is it motivates her. It doesn't feel like it doesn't make her feel accomplished. It makes her feel motivated. And I like that about that angle. She's up maybe 6 offers, all, really, really good blue blood programs, Creighton, Wisconsin, Minnesota, along with Iowa State, Iowa, and Michigan. Just really impressive programs that we've met some incredible people. She's taking a visit to North Carolina next week. So the hard part is scheduling all this stuff along having 3 other kids you're trying to raise and get them to soccer and basketball and all this stuff. But just really, I think you've had your kids in college now and moved on, have been athletes in high school, and I know you have at least a soccer player, if not 2, in the house. Sage, it's like you see them accomplish something, no matter what the level. When you see them work for it and then accomplish it, just give a different feeling than anything when you did it yourself. And she blows me away. I mean, I watch her, they won the state championship game in 8th grade. She won the state title. She was a runner-up as a 7th grader. And for her to go in a moment and play, she did so her, and handle herself the way she did against, you can imagine, every opposing team's crowd. They know they know what's coming, and and she handles it. I don't know. My wife does a lot. She does, because people aren't that nice. To be honest with you, you can imagine you at a high school crowd, and people aren't super nice to her already. So it's only going to get worse as she ages through this thing. But it's fun to raise good kids. And a lot of fun to see them accomplish goals that they kind of put in front of them. So far it's been great. But we'll see on the second. We'll see.
Plus, it's got to be a little bit of a challenge where she walks into the gym, and my guess is it says Greenway in the back of her jersey. And in Minnesota, there's really only one Greenway. It's Chad Greenway, right? But so she has this target on her back where everyone knows, hey, that's former Viking Chad Greenway's daughter. So even if she wasn't good, she would have that pressure on her. If she was the 8th girl coming off the bench, that every time she shot, there'd be like, is Chad Greenway's daughter any good? You know what I mean? And so she already has.
In youth basketball, like when I coached her from 3rd grade up till 6th grade, so then on to high 7th. And the hard part for me was removing that pressure on me. That like my kid doesn't have to be good. That's no indication on my career. I had accomplished things and been done. I'm done. So I had to make sure that I'm coaching in a way that made sense to her, but the other girls, to say, hey, this is about the girls. This is about the kids. This is about their love for the game. And can I grow that? Can I get these kids to whatever level they want to get to. It's not about what level I think they get to. It's like, what are their goals? So, just in the NFL and college, like I have them do goal sheets. I have them say out loud to me, like, what do you want to do? I want to be a varsity starter. Okay, then I'm going to coach you to that level. I'm going to make sure that I'm going to hold you accountable as an athlete, the great athlete, to say, you're a varsity player. Well, that's the Varsity Players Act. That, they put the work in, they do this, do that. Not a crazy person, but learning how sports can teach kids about when you set a goal to say, well, if that's the goal, then here's a trajectory and here's the expectation. If I was playing the NBA, then that's going to be a different trajectory than maybe somebody else. And I'm going to coach you maybe to that level, but to help kids understand, like, what does that look like? To say, like, I want to play varsity basketball. Well, that's not easy. A lot of kids don't play varsity basketball. To that, it's a certain level of work. And that's why I've tried to take from my experience to say, I'm not going to be a crazy dad, a crazy parent, but I want to make sure they understand when you say something, right, this is what it actually means. Now, how bad do you want what you said? And then are you willing to do that? And I think that's the biggest thing. And, and now that Madden has done so well, like all the other girls are like, well, that's what I want. So my next one is Beckett. She's going to 6th grade, and she's a really talented athlete herself. And it's like the next one, and they all see this now, and they just they want more of it. They want to take phone calls to college. They want to take visits. And so it's kind of I always have told Madden, like, you set the tone for our family and what we're about. And starts with your actions, how you treat people, starts with your academics and approach. And it starts how you can, if you're going to be an athlete, you don't want me to do it, you don't go out there and not compete. So she's certainly done that.
Outstanding stuff, Chad. Well, we won't keep you any longer, and certainly appreciate your time and all the great stuff you're doing. We got to get you back on because we got to talk about Grey Duck vodka because it's sold here in the state of Iowa, and all the great stuff you're doing as an entrepreneur and in philanthropy as well. I know you've been a generous donor to the Children's Hospital in Iowa City and several other places. So congrats on all your success. Appreciate your time. And we can get along even for this week, right? Cyclones and Hawkeyes.
I just wish I was at the tailgate again. That's all I really cared about these days is what food at the tailgate. So, yeah, I mean, it's funny. I just want to speak on that. First of all, thanks for having me on. It's been a blast to kind of just talk through the stuff, and it'll be a great game regardless of the outcome. I'm excited to watch it. The one thing about it, I go to the game this weekend, and I'm sitting in an area with like 5 of my college teammates. That we all played, we all lived and breathed and have moved on down. And you look around the crowd and how angry people are and how mad, and they're yelling at the quarterback and they're yelling at this and the coach. And I'm like, man, I just don't ever want to be that guy. I've just been like, I lived it, breathed, know the pressures, I know the stress, I know what it is. And it's like, it's nice to sit back and say, what's the worst thing that can happen to the Hawkeyes this weekend? Well, the worst thing that can happen is they could lose. Well, okay, if that's the worst thing that can happen, I guess that's okay. And we can all have our banter back and forth and give each other a shot, who won, whatever, that sort of pride in your team. But it's like, at the end of the day, guys, like, that's the worst thing that can happen is you can lose. That's it. So it's not the worst thing.
I do think there's like a virus that has traveled to this country probably for a long time. We didn't know it really as players, but now I've been to those stands too. I call it fan narcissism. It's where these fans, usually men, but not always, women too, they definitely know way more than all the coaches on both sides of the ball. They definitely know. They absolutely know what should be going on, what should happen, who should be playing, and who should get the ball. They know. And it's like rampant. And I feel like every year, the more games I go to, the more I hear this, like, telling the coach what to do. And college football is when it's complicated from an X's and O's standpoint, it's also just complicated from a player standpoint. You got 100 guys or whatever on the sidelines, and there's so many things going on. It's a huge operation, and until you've been in that world, you just have no idea. Really, I mean, listen, there are bad play calls. Don't get there it is. There are bad play calls, right? We all know they should have ran it, they should have thrown it. There are some obvious ones, but there's a lot of know-it-all coaches that are in those stands who have actually never coached anything, but maybe their kids like a Pee Wee League football team. So I'm sure there'll be plenty of there this weekend. I'm sure the Grey Duck vodka will be flowing wherever the Hawkeyes and Cyclones are. I'm glad it's being sold in the great state of Iowa. and I've had it myself. Great vodka.
Yeah,
congrats on that. By the way, how did you come up with Gray Duck vodka? Because in Iowa we go Duck Duck Goose, but in Minnesota they go Duck Duck Gray Duck. Is that right?
Yeah, it's all a Minnesota thing. It's all the messed up Minnesotans that call it Duck Duck Gray Duck. And my business partners came to me it's been 4 years now. It's crazy. And then the concept of let's build on this Gray Duck kind of Minnesota made idea. It was kind of floating around, but nobody had really put it to work. So we said, let's be the one. So we did it. It's been a lot of fun. We've heavily focused on Minnesota and the Dakotas, Wisconsin. Iowa came into, and we've kind of retracted back because we didn't have the marketing resources. You guys, it's a marketing spend. It's a whole business model, right? So from a P&L standpoint, it's been like we're going to enter back in a bigger level. But I learned much every year that I've ever could have imagined. It's been an absolute blast. And it's fun to see something you start with nothing and create that is now a legitimate big time product that is all over. And now we're creating new products, and it's been interesting, and I've learned. We've told no a lot, and but it's always fun when you hear that yes.
That's awesome, man. Well, hey, Chad, appreciate your time, and let's hope the right team wins, whoever that is, right?
That's a good guy.
All right.
Thanks for
Thank you, Chad.
All right, Chad. Thanks for coming on.
Your old teammate, Chad Greenway. Just a good guy. I like that Hawkeye. I think I'm okay with Chad Greenway.
You listen, there's a lot of Hawkeyes I could have probably called to have on this show, and Chad is definitely near or at the top of that list. He's small town guy, 26 kids in his high school class, right? I think a lot of Iowans can really appreciate that. The Dakotas and Nebraska and Iowa and Minnesota and Wisconsin, and it's small town, a lot of small town people. And he grew up a farmer, and what I loved about his story is that despite the fact that he's a Ring of Honor guy with the Minnesota Vikings, great player and just beloved in Minnesota, one scholarship offer.
Wow.
And one scholarship offer, not from Iowa, what it is now, one scholarship offer when Iowa was literally at the bottom of where they were. Ferentz was truly starting over. And I think they won one game in 99 and a couple games in 2000. And he went there about 2002. So it wasn't like he was recruited by a big time program. That one scholarship offer was pretty much, well, I guess I'll take it because it's the only offer I have. And what a great story that is for him to go there and have a great career, playing some huge games and really leave his mark, leave his legacy, and then go to the NFL, leave his legacy there. And now it seems like his legacy is continuing with his daughters. He's got, I think, 4 daughters, and this first one, Madden, 8 freshmen in high school, and looks like she'll be playing some Division I basketball. And it sounds like there's another one coming up after that is a better shooter than Madden is. And so really cool story. Chad Greenway is a great story. He is a sort of perfect state of Iowa type of person. I think he represents the entire state well. And of course he represents Iowa very, very well. And he and I got along great. I'm from Macokota, which is a town of 6,000, but really I was in the Andrews School District, which doesn't even have a high school anymore. So I'm from
Never heard of it.
I'm from that type of small town as well. And I can really appreciate people who have flown under the radar and just worked and love competing, love playing multiple sports, and found their way to get a scholarship and then made the most out of it. And that's definitely what Chad Greenway did.
Sage, quickly, final thoughts on the Cy-Hawk game. What are you thinking keys for Iowa State or Iowa to win on Saturday?
Well, I'll tell you, we didn't really talk much about Iowa State's win against Southeast
Missouri, there isn't much to say.
Yeah. I went back and rewatched the game. Hunter Deckers looked great, and I'm really excited to see this kid play against now, as we know, one of the better defenses consistently in the Big Ten Conference, and sort of real football type of scenario. So guys won't be as open. The protection won't be as good, and I'm excited to see him in action against this very, very good defense. And so hoping it's not a low scoring game. I'm hoping it's a high scoring game. If it's a high scoring game, I really love Iowa State, and if we can score 20 points, of course, I like our chances in this one.
Yeah, I think if Iowa State can spread out Iowa and throw it, I mean, that's the key. And it looked like for me, from my amateur eye, Sage, that Iowa State's best, most reliable offense this year may be going 3-4 wide and letting Deckers throw it around the yard a little bit.
It is interesting that, over the last, 20 whatever years, Iowa's had more success than Iowa State, but we've had a lot of success, obviously, on our end as well. But I've always thought I think we have better skill position players, in particular on offense. offense.
I think this year
than the
for sure,
University
yeah.
of Iowa. They've always sort of had lines, offensive and defensive line, but from a like a wide receiver skill standpoint, a lot of times in running backs, we've had our last two running backs have been drafted in the second and third rounds and are going to be good players in the NFL. I mean, David Montgomery's a really good player in the NFL already, and so I feel like we have that skill position player advantage, and I think we need to take advantage of that as much as we can.
All right, Sage. Well, enjoy the rest of Maine. Where are you at again? Bailey's Island?
I'm in Bailey Island at
Bailey
the
Island.
Driftwood Inn. Check it out on your Google Maps. It's literally at the end. It's the end of a highway, so it's literally a point just surrounded by rocks and ocean. It's pretty cool. Old fashioned. I was definitely my girlfriend and I were definitely the youngest people here by about 25 years. But truly getaway time from my generally fairly hectic life. But from here, travel to Los Angeles on Wednesday. I'll be out there for about 4 days, and they're going to go to that Chargers Raiders game, which would be pretty sweet. And then I'll be back home, back to the Midwest, back to Omaha on Monday. So I assume that's where I'll be next Tuesday. But you never know.
I can't wait to find out. We'll talk to you next week, Sage.
All right, sounds good.